United States and Iran have been holding face-to-face negotiations here in Pakistan. They are the highest level talks between the two sides since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. And given the importance of this diplomacy, the world's media are waiting for news of any developments. We have so far limited information about how those talks are going. What is significant is that they are continuing. But we do know that there are key sticking points to talk about. One of them is that ceasefire in Lebanon, which is missing and was meant to be part of this ceasefire which had stopped attacks against Iran. Well, my colleague Lucy Hawkins later in this program will take a closer look at what is happening on that front. But let's start here. So let's start here in Islamabad. It's been our top news all day on the BBC, and of course, it's making headlines right around the world. These first face-to-face talks between a delegation from the United States and Iran in the presence of Pakistani mediators. The goal is to try to bring an end to this war now in its 6 weeks. But there are other broader points of understanding of the differences and divides between the United States and Israel that both sides have been trying to resolve for many years. But we still don't know if they've been able to make any progress on closing those gaps. What we do know is that technical teams have joined the delegation, and that is a sign of very serious engagements. As we've been saying throughout the day, it's very frustrating for the journalists, perhaps good for the negotiators. Very little information is getting out, very few photographs and images. But when the day began, we did receive both photographs as well as films of the individual meetings between the sides. So the U.S. delegation, led by the Vice President J.D. Vance, had their own talks, bilateral talks, with the Pakistani mediators, including the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and to the Iranian delegation, led by the parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, had his own discussions, accompanied by the members of his team, with the senior Pakistani military and political officials. But let's look in detail now at some of the sticking points that are likely to stand in the way of any real progress in resolving the differences that have been fueling this war and could, it must be emphasized, trigger another escalation in this all too dangerous war. Top of the list is now a new problem that has been put on the agenda by the war, and that is what will happen to the Strait of Hormuz, that key waterway for the world's oil and gas traffic. But it has been mainly blocked by Iran, though only those tankers and vessels approved by Iran have been getting through. And it's a very, very small number compared to the traffic before the war. The U.S. wants safe passage to be resumed, but Iran is very adamant that it will not go back to the situation before the war. It wants to retain some kind of control over what is now its key leverage and a bargaining chip in this crisis. Another key point will be Iran's nuclear capabilities. The regime insists it's never tried to develop a bomb, but Iran has enriched uranium far beyond what it might need for a civil program. The U.S. wants Iran to hand over what it has. And a ceasefire in Lebanon, which so far hasn't happened. The U.S. and Israel have indicated that Lebanon doesn't form part of the ceasefire deal, but Pakistan, a key mediator in these talks, has said that it does. Well, let's get a summary of what has been the most significant developments in the day. We can go to the convention center close to the venue of the talks and speak to Kasra Naji, special correspondent for the BBC's Persian service. Kasra Naji, what's your assessment so far of the talks today?
I think it has been much better than expected, actually. By my reckoning, they have been talking to each other, the two sides, directly and in the same room for more than 4 hours. We know that they talked roughly about 2 hours, and then they took a break about 45 minutes, and then they came back and they started having more discussions while they having dinner. It was a sort of a working dinner that they engaged in, and that went on for about an hour. And so far as I know, at this moment now, the talks are still there, but the two sides are exchanging documents. What these documents are all about, we have absolutely no idea what they have been talking about and what these documents entail. But we're getting reports that on the issue of control of the Strait of Hormuz, there's been an impasse. The fact is that, well, the reports are saying that Iran is insisting that it will have the sole control over this very important waterway, and they have rejected a joint operation or joint control by the United States. So that's the sticking point. That's the first one, and that relates directly to the issue of the ceasefire. So we're still in the very early stages. We're still talking about whether we can hold on to this ceasefire. We know that in the last hour or so, CENTCOM, which is the American forces in the region, they're saying that 2 ships, military ships, passed through the Strait of Hormuz today into the Sea of Oman, and CENTCOM says that they will do more of that in the days to come, and they want to sort of clear mines from this waterway and also clear what they call undersea drones there.
Kasranaji, special correspondent for BBC Persian, thank you very much for joining us.
And welcome everyone to Doha. We're going to take a closer look now at one of those sticking points that's been raised, Lebanon. Let's take you through some of the details of what's been happening there. Strikes in the country putting a real strain on this US-Iran ceasefire. The two sides have agreed to meet for talks in Washington on Tuesday, but Israel and the Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah have continued to trade fire since the ceasefire was announced. Today, Israel saying it struck 200 Hezbollah targets in Lebanon in 24 hours. The Lebanese Health Ministry says more than 2,000 people have been killed there through the course of the war, and more than 350 killed on Wednesday alone. Well, Lebanon's Deputy Prime Minister has told the BBC that strikes on his country need to stop ahead of those talks on Tuesday.
I think for those meetings to be meaningful, we've got to see some sort of cessation of hostilities, no matter if provisional.
Okay.
How could you engage in meaningful discussions, preparing through negotiations to talk about all issues? How can you do that while tens and hundreds of people are being killed or injured?
The humanitarian situation in Lebanon is desperate as well, and it's getting worse by the hour, as Hugo Pacheco reports from Beirut.
In Lebanon, the war continues, and there have been more Israeli airstrikes, particularly in the south of the country, and also more attacks from Hezbollah targeting northern Israel. And this is a country still healing after one of its deadliest days in its recent history, after those massive Israeli airstrikes, and people here are desperate for some respite. And this is just one of the consequences of the conflict here in Lebanon. This is Beirut's waterfront, which is now home to hundreds of families who've been forced to flee their homes because of the war. And these people have mainly come from Shia communities, so there is a sectarian component to the crisis happening here. They've come from Dahir in southern Beirut, also southern Lebanon and the eastern Bekaa Valley, areas that have been heavily targeted by the Israeli military. And these are areas where Hezbollah enjoys significant support. More than 1 million people have been displaced because of this conflict. This means a fifth of the population. And aid agencies are warning of the devastating consequences of the crisis here. So for Lebanon, there is no end to the war and to the suffering of its people.
Let's take you straight to Jerusalem now. We can join our correspondent there, Joel Gunter. Joel, talks taking place next week in Washington between the Lebanese government and Israel. What do we know about those?
Yeah, we understand that those talks are due to take place face-to-face next Tuesday in Washington, but we do still have what appears to be a clear impasse between the two sides on what those talks are supposed to cover. We've heard from Lebanese officials that they're saying they expect to be discussing a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. We've heard from Israeli officials that they are adamant that they are not pursuing a ceasefire with Hezbollah. Now, as you were mentioning, Israel has underscored that by continuing to strike across the country, something that Lebanese officials do not see as a good foundation for talks. It's a tricky situation for the Prime Minister here, Benjamin Netanyahu, because the situation with Lebanon has threatened to undermine the fragile ceasefire process between the US and Iran. And Prime Minister Netanyahu may find himself under increasing pressure from the US. It's no secret that President Trump is seeking a quick exit from this unpopular war, and he may be putting more pressure on Israel. Now, that may simply be more scaling back of Israel's campaign in Lebanon, which we've seen over the past couple of days. But certainly the Israelis may find themselves under pressure for a more permanent resolution in Lebanon.
Joel, thank you so much. Well, these talks do feel like a very important, a hugely significant moment of this war. And it really is a moment that was hard to comprehend a week ago. Many of you have got questions that you've been searching for online. So let's bring Lise back in to try and answer a few of those. Lise, one of the questions we've had is one person asking and saying, is this a negotiation or extortion?
That's a very interesting way to put it, Lucy. Of course, there's always bargaining, going back and forth, compromises that have to be made during a negotiation. Both sides do ask for sometimes on financial issues, on territorial issues. Perhaps it could be seen as extortion in a very crude and harsh way. But no, it is negotiations. And perhaps the questioner is looking at the fact that Iran is asking for its assets to be unfrozen. Well, that money belongs to the Islamic Republic of Iran. It was frozen at some point in recent years. Some of it goes back to the Islamic Revolution of 1979. So Iran regards that as illegal. And therefore, when that money has been released, and it was during President Obama's time, during President Biden's time, and now possibly now during President Trump's time, is that they are releasing assets which do belong to the government, and you could say to the people of Iran.
And very briefly, Lise, what do you think success looks like in these talks? Because here in the Gulf, the feeling is success would be just a continuation of the ceasefire.
Even that would be important, Lucy. There's no way they're going to resolve all the issues. They've met, which is important. If they agree to extend the ceasefire, if they agree to meet again, if they even agree on a framework for further discussions, all of that has to be seen as a win.